I welcome all the members and core group on behalf of JB Nagar CPE Study Circle for this annual and most awaited webinar of budget analysis. I also welcome star speakers of our JB Nagar CPE Study Circle, CATP Oswal ji, who would enlighten us on direct tax proposals, and CASP Tulsianji for the impact of budget on the capital market. I welcome CA Lalit Bajajji, our WIRC chairman, and we are thankful to him for gracing the event as chief guest today. Now, I hand over the proceedings to our core group founder member and past Central Council member of CA Sanju Maheshwari ji to carry on the event. Thank you. Sanjeev ji.
Thank you, Seema ji. Thank you very much. A very hearty and a warm welcome to all the participants to this budget meeting being regularly organized by JB Nagar CPE Study Circle. Of course, this is a new format. We have all been always meeting on the physical forum at Kohinoor, but with changing times, I think the CA profession has also changed. And so as the organizers of JB Nagar CPE Study Circle decided to ensure that the continuity of the best of the speakers for dissecting the budget be made available to all the participants. And I think this knowledge sharing platform, the endeavor to continue sharing of knowledge by the best of the speakers is the hallmark of JB Nagar CPE. And I'm sure that all the members will find this session an extremely useful, beneficial session today. Friends, the dark clouds on economy due to this unprecedented pandemic had made the Union Budget 21 a very much awaited union budget. And the finance minister has responded with a big fiscal stimulus and structural initiatives by bringing in big reforms in banking, be it insurance, disinvestment, and so many new things which have come in. And from the common man's perspective, of course, that what we are going to know about taxes, but the non-enhancement of tax rate, the expectation all around that there will be a COVID tax, and non-happening of a negative event itself has become a big event for the community at large and the stock market in particular. I think this the focus of the government of focusing on ease of doing business in India has been one of the most important formative steps that the government has taken. So friends, today we are indeed privileged that we have some of the best speakers who will give us insight into this budget. We have with us our very regular contributors, people who have honored us by their regular participation in JB Nagar CPE meetings. First is, of course, CA TP Oswal sir, and on the direct taxes. And two is, of course, we have on the impact on the capital market, we have CA SP Tulsianji. I also have the privilege of also welcoming CA Lalit Bajaj, our WRC chairman here, CA Manish Gadia, our regional council member. And before we move forward in terms of the program on the technical aspect, I would like to invite our past convener, Mahesh Bhageria ji, to please come and actually speak a few words about the study circle. Mahesh Bhageria ji, please.
Thank you, Sanjeev ji. During this COVID-19 period, it was a very difficult period. And I must say that our convener, CA Seema Mehta ji, has done a commendable job. Out of total 51 events during the year, she has completed virtual meetings, 43 virtual meetings events she has done. So that's not a small one. Every month's average 4 to 5 events she has completed. So a big thanks to Seema ji for organizing such a virtual meetings with a lot of speakers. We have been little highlights of our JB Nagar Study Circle for the Lalit Bajaj ji, our speakers and participants. We have been the winner of the Best Study Circle Award and Appreciation Certificates for 16 years in succession. We have done 115 absolute CPE hours generated through virtual CPE programs. More than 15,127 persons attended the various events of our study circle. 34,502 CPE hours were generated during the year by conducting CPE programs. We introduced new concept of live streaming of session on YouTube from last year for the benefit of all the members. All ICAI members can view the videos of our seminars and webinars at any time on our YouTube channel, JB Nagar CP Study Circle of WARC of ICAI. So not our only our members, but all any of the ICAI members can get the benefit out of that, looking at our YouTube channel for any such webinars at any point of time. We are invited faculties from Mumbai and outside Mumbai across India, the best speakers from WRC and ICAI presidents and others. We have conducted successfully awareness program on code of ethics as required by the institute. Current year study circle invited 2 past presidents of ICAI in the virtual study circle meeting, which was held on 19th of September 2020 on the topics accounting and auditing profession. Then, now, and way forward, and the meeting was attended by more than 300 participants. Seemaji's thought organization seminar was based on ABCD topics. A, artificial intelligence, B is a blockchain, C, cyber security, D for data analysis, ABCD topics. We provided a separate link for every virtual meeting held through Zoom platform. We have started innovative idea of sending Google form for every meeting through which members can ask any query or any questions up to 2 days before of the scheduled meeting, so that speakers can cover the same in his presentation. 2 lakhs plus SMS and WhatsApp messages sent to our members, 2,60,000 plus emails sent to our members, 1,250 booklet of the budget 2020 was distributed free to among our members last time. A well-maintained library cum reading room is facilities available in our area for the benefit of the students, CA students. We have actively participated in CA Foundation Day celebration, Color of Life. We have distributed the WRC Reference Manual 2021 to the members at concessional rate. Active participation of study circle members in coordinating the various program of WRC, which Lalitji is definitely might have. Members of study circle had given lectures in various webinars. Free virtual yoga session we have conducted. Study circle has made contribution of rupees 2,51,000 towards ICAI COVID-19 relief fund to support government initiative to strengthen infrastructure and fight the pandemic. We have organized the meetings with WRC on investor awareness, which is attended by more than 260 peoples. Friends, these were the few highlights of the activities of our study circle conducted under the convener Sri Seema Mehta ji and Deputy Convener C.A. Krishnan Kumar ji. I congratulate both of them, and 2 months are pending. So I hope you will definitely hit more success during your period. Thanks to everybody. Sanjeev ji.
Thank you, Mahesh ji. Thank you for sharing the highlights of the various activities at the JB Nagar CP Study Circle in the year 2021, and particularly the kind of good work that the convener and the deputy convener have carried out in these testing times. Friends, as we move forward, we have with us C. Lalit Bajaj, Chairman of Western India Regional Council. Of course, for the chairman of the region, of such a large region, the largest in the country in terms of membership, it was a Herculean task of rendering services to the members and students in these COVID times. But nevertheless, this chairman, a very smiling, ever smiling personality. Whenever you speak to him, you will always find him laughing and smiling. And I think that's his trait. I wouldn't really be wanting to spend too much of time in introducing our speakers here. I would straight away like to request Lalit ji to address us. But prior to that, I think there is one very important task that we have, is that like every year, this year too, JB Nagar CP Study Circle members have gone ahead and actually made a publication on the budget. And as you are aware that it's a Herculean task in these particular times, normal times also, but in these particular times, or more particularly, that you have to have a budget booklet to be put together. I would request Chairman Lalit Bajaj to inaugurate that electronically. And before that, I would also like to list out a list of contributors who have worked from day before yesterday and ensure that we have a publication ready, prepared with us. So I would just read out the names. CA Haridas Bhatt, CA Jayesh Shah, CA Chintan Shah, CA Akhil Khedia, CA Sumit Junjunwala, CA Krishna Kumar, CA Darshini Shah, Mr. Aman Halwai, CA Manish Kadia, CA Mahavir Jain, CA Mahesh Bagaria, CA Jinit Shah, CA Seema Mehta, CA Nidil Lalpuria, CA Umesh Marwadi, and CA Purvi Bhageria.
I will share.
I think Seema ji, thank you. Thank you for taking lead in this. And I'm sure that you will be circulating a soft copy of this budget publication to all our members.
Yes, just now I will share with the members.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And thank you, Lalit ji, for doing the honors. May I request CA Lalit to please share his wisdom and thoughts with us.
Respected speaker and expert on the subject and our guide in all the activities at WIRC, CA TP Oswal ji. In absentia, the speaker supposed to speak on impact on capital market, CA SP Tulsian ji. My elder brother, CA Sanjeev Maheshwari ji, to whom I have always looked upon as to develop all the virtues which he has carried on while doing his activity at ICI. My colleague in the council, CA Manish Gadia, CA Mahesh Bagaria ji, Convener Seema Mehta, Deputy Convener Krishna Kedia, seniors and members. I am fortunate to be with all of you, and I am privileged to share the dais with all the luminaries who have always guided me, and I have learned a lot from all of them. At the outset, let me congratulate the study circle, conveners, deputy conveners, members, and all the members who have worked behind coming out with this very act publication on union budget. 19th publication, as I have been updated. I would like to really congratulate all of you, and I understand that when we come out with any such compilation, it requires a lot of effort because we have to come out with this publication within the shortest time, and you have come out with this publication within a period of, I think so, 48 hours. A big congratulations to all of you for doing this wonderful job. I would like to again congratulate all those parents and all those students who have cleared their chartered accountancy exams, the results which were announced a couple of days back. I wish that all your endeavors as chartered accountants are achieved successfully in the near future. The finance bill has been awarded standing ovation by share market. The business economy at large have very positively accepted the finance bill. And we as professionals have always stood by government, have always stood by the business community when it comes to any of the legislation or any of the enactment which comes in various provisions which is affecting the business community. Some of the areas whereby members might be feeling that these are the areas whereby some of the scope of our chartered accountants have been reduced to some extent. I think so. There is a lot more to happen in profession, in a dynamic profession like chartered accountancy. It is a balanced budget, whether it is economic provisions or whether it is fiscal provisions. I think so lot many changes have happened, and we will really be understanding a lot by the deliberation from our experts in today's session. No doubt infrastructure has been given a pivotal emphasis as to bringing various changes providing various resources in the upliftment and development of infrastructure, whether it is hospitality, whether it is rural infrastructure, or whether any financial infrastructure or any other infrastructure. I think so this was need of the hour, and we all were expecting this. And when I specifically talk about the provisions as to direct tax is concerned, couple of things which I can just list out immediately is, previously it was reason to believe on the basis of which the assessments used to happen. This has been converted to the information based assessments. Secondly, the time limit for reopening of small cases has been reduced to 3 years to 6 years. I think so these are some of the welcome steps whereby the hardships faced by the smaller SSEs and the resources invested on them will be really saved and at the same time invested properly. As far as the changes related to the audit provisions in GST or in direct tax laws is concerned, I don't know, Sanjeev ji is there on the panel and experts are on the panel. I would really look upon them to understand as to, I think so our profession has to really understand as to we are moving out from the protectionist approach as to a dynamic profession. I think so your words of wisdom will really help us to understand this particular aspects of changes in the various provisions affecting all of us. There are various other things as far as direct tax laws is concerned. I think so today's session will really help us to understand the various things. Mahesh ji have listed out the various things which have happened in the study circle arena in this last 1 year at JB Nagar. I would really like to thank JB Nagar Study Circle for virtuously engaging themselves into the activity relating to COVID area, whereby you have assisted, you have put all your efforts, and also helping ICI in conducting exams successfully, because lot many members from JB Nagar have really assisted ICI in conducting its exams which were held in November successfully. I would really look forward with very high regards to JB Nagar Study Circle as to reaching out to the requirements, reaching out to the various objectives of the members at large, which you have always done. I understand that any kind of certificate or any kind of acknowledgement can't justify the efforts put in by the study circle and its members, but I would really like to thank from the bottom of my heart for all the efforts put in by the team, core group, and all the members of JB Nagar Study Circle. And I look forward for a lot of participation, for a lot of contribution from all of you in all the activities of WIRC and Study Circle in future. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us and your words of wisdom. I'm sure that the members of our study circle will live up to your expectations, and wherever you deem fit, JB Nagar Study Circle is always available at the call of the WIRC or of the ICI, and we would be more than glad to help the institute in any which way that we can. Thank you very much for joining us today and being part of this program. Friends, as we move forward, of course, we have our star speaker, Oswal Saab, and I think though I have a big list of achievements that is part of his profile, but I don't think that all that is required for the members of this particular study circle who have really loved him and have been very proactively always interacting with the organizers of the study circle to ensure that Oswal Saab is always there with us as far as budget program is concerned. And we have always been privileged that Oswal Saab has given the first Sunday invariably post budget announcement immediately to this JB Nagar CP study circle, and he gives his commitments to any other study circle for anything post fixing up the time with JB Nagar study circle. And I think that's his love, that's his introduction for this session. On the academic part, of course, we all know he's an outstanding and a brilliant professional, but very importantly, he has been recognized as among the world's top 10 professionals in terms of transfer pricing, He's been a member of the subcommittee on transparency for developing countries by United Nations. The list is long. The list has got many more things, but I'm going to stop here, and I'm not going to be between you and Oswal Saab. And I would request Oswal Saab to please take charge and address the gathering here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll just share the screen, and I'll just say something before that. Normally, I don't speak looking at the screen. Everything is extempore, but this time the opportunity has been given to work out the presentation so that people at large can benefit. At times, what happens if you are speaking physically, people can make out from your reactions, or people can make out for your actions. But here, possibly, actions cannot be so loud and clear. So therefore, I thought that let us have some presentation also. And my boys in my office did a wonderful job of creating presentation quickly. This afternoon only we started, and I just saw to it that it is all complete and everything is complete, edited also. Well, it was a challenging year for the government with a pandemic, lot of expenditure on infrastructure, healthcare, and all sort of things which have happened. All of us know it very well. The fiscal deficit government has been faced with a 7.7% as per the of the GDP as per the budget papers, but they are coming out with a V-shaped recovery. So therefore, next year they are projecting growth of more than 6%, 6.8%, which is remarkable for the country like ours. We are one of the few countries which have come out of the COVID substantially. I don't think that we have faced with the COVID-2 reactions at all. We are lucky enough, and we have been able to also develop our own vaccine, and the progress of vaccine is going on very smoothly and rapidly. The reformist government, this government, I would take the view that this is a reformist government. Of course, there are controversies on farm reforms and all these things. There is another reform which is coming up, which is applicable from 1st of April. That is wages reform, or the employee sector reform. 44 laws are consolidated into 4 laws. Also, this government, this budget is a document which is going to be an important document for this decade. What the government has projected, they are focusing on the increasing administrative ease of doing business, transparency in doing business, in simplification of legal provisions. These are the major themes of this budget the FM has announced. FM has also mentioned that securities laws will be consolidated into one code. Securities law code will be coming up in respect of Securities Exchange Board, Depositories Act, Securities Contract Regulation Act, and the Government Securities Act. So one consolidated law. I think this is very, very essential. Country like ours need to have less regulations, but more tight regulation. Unfortunately, more and more regulations are created, more and more then authorities are created, and there is a coordination, missing of a coordination takes place, and that people take advantage of that. Similarly, the finance minister is on the record to say that we are going to have investor charter to assimilate the right of all financial investors across all financial products, which is again a healthy trend. Investors' right also should be, charter should be also spelled out. Then further, one-man company concept which was introduced under the Companies Act. I'm just dwelling upon some of the important aspects in a very at the beginning, because these are the important landmark things which budget has brought in, and they are required to be told to people. Landmark change, which is in case of one-man company, which has been proposed, and number of days stay here, etc., are reduced by non-resident Indian if he sets up a one-man company, which hitherto only residents were permitted. So 120 days stay is allowed for a non-resident who sets up a one-man company. This 120 days rule comes absolutely from Section 6(1) of the Income Tax Act, which was amended last year. The foreign direct investment in an insurance sector which has been a major demand of the world, from 49% to 74% by foreigners is allowed to be invested. One thing I must say, that insurance companies are, the public is more beneficiary of the insurance company, because they pass on the claim. The people pass on their claim to the insurance company and we get the claim. And therefore, foreigners coming into and investing into the company is a boost to the public, so that they can also lodge their claims appropriately against the insurance policies which they have taken. The procedural changes in the budget are many more, which we will discuss in detail. Particularly, if you look at there is a faceless appellate procedure, appellate tribunal, which has been created. One of the areas where there will be a lot of things can be said, which I'll say at the time when I come to that particular aspect. Then you have got the number of years reopening cases up to, earlier it was 6 years, now it has been reduced to 3 years. And of course, in other cases is 16 years, 10 years. The provision for 16 years reopening in the case you have a foreign account or any asset abroad which was detected later on has been done away with. Under 148, that has been given burial. Under the new 148A, that does not exist. Settlement Commission has been buried. Only pending cases will be taken up. Advanced Ruling Authority, this change is really, least we say is best, because Advanced Ruling Authority never functioned in this country except in first 2-3 years. And the applications you make to the Advanced Ruling Authority, 6 to 8 years it remains pending. What is the purpose of advanced ruling if the applications are not disposed of within 6 to 8 years? So therefore, they have now changed it to a board of advanced ruling, and the board will be manned by the chief commissioners, two persons. So therefore, only chief commissioner. So it will be like extension of income tax wing only. Only one advantage of that, if anything is said adversely against against the taxpayer or against the department, both parties can file an appeal to the High Court. So therefore, the board for advanced ruling will be a speedy way of going to the High Court, like DRP is a speedy way of going to the tribunal. Major changes which have been proposed is in the concept of International Financial Services Center at Gandhidham in Ahmedabad. So this is, honestly speaking, this is the first time a good attempt. Government has tried to create a lot of investors to come into that center and operate in India. And therefore, it's a welcome, but unfortunately, we have only one financial center. And the financial center, which was expected to come up in Mumbai, has already been transferred to Ahmedabad. That is this this is a International Financial Center. And with the lack of coordination between the state and central government, I don't foresee any possibility of getting International Financial Center in the Mumbai in a near future. Startup has been given quite a boost. RIT and InvIT, which was an important concept which was brought out in the Act in 2016, and it was not working very well, though some of the RITs have come up and InvIT also has come up, and they have got a lot of business out of it.
Oswal ji, ये slide move नहीं हो रहा है.
Slide अभी चालू ही नहीं किया बोलने के लिए, तो कहाँ से move करें?
Sorry.
Okay. I'm only giving you introductory speech. I'll come to that. Just one last minute, one minute, only last point. So therefore, InvIT has been made more relaxed, and the RIT concept has been, and therefore possibly from the current year you will see the InvIT and RIT will have a better time in this country. And these are the only last thing which I would like to say in the introduction, that the government has given importance to Atmanirbhar. Atmanirbhar concept means what? It means be self-dependent. Oxford Dictionary has adopted this word in the dictionary in English. Atmanirbhar, and therefore government in a truly sense, they believe Income Tax Act also, the practitioners should also have Atmanirbhar. So most of the responsibility has been shifted to taxpayer, tax consultants rather than the officers. Whole of their work we are going to do it, and therefore even filing of returns sometimes will go back to the go to the bank, but we are doing all this work for no return, only liabilities. And this is one area where possibly the Chartered Accountants Institute should represent to the government that in a scheme of simplification, where you are trusting chartered accountants so much and asking them to the work for and on behalf of the government, why can't you trust little more and say that yes, we want to work with you and we also want to reward you for doing work. Instead of rewarding, they are taking away the work of chartered accountants, which was hitherto handled by them. Well, friends, let's come to the hardcore finance budgets. I tried to divide these provisions in the various topics, like I have taken corporate tax, income tax, individual tax, then there will be a division for international tax, charitable trusts, and all sort of capital gains. All divisions are made, and I suppose that JB Nagar is going to share the presentation to everybody. I have no reservation on that. Employees contributing the provident fund to the provident fund. Please note that this does not apply to the public provident fund where we contribute. If a person contributes more than rupees 2,50,000 per annum per year, last year, a few years before, it was said that if somebody contributes more than 7,50,000, then interest earned on such contribution will become taxable in their hands. That limit has been brought down to 2,50,000. It means some of the very high net worth individual employees in the companies, they were contributing voluntarily over and above the contribution which they were required to make as an employee under the Act, along with the employer, to the Provident Fund scheme or superannuation scheme. And here they have now said you cannot contribute anything more than 250,000 rupees. In case if you contribute more than 250,000 rupees on or after 1st April 2021, please note this amendment is prospective, and therefore any contributions made prior to this date will not be affected, but any contribution made after 1st April 2021, then any interest earned thereon will become taxable. It will not be exempted. And that is one amendment which is going to be a blow to very white collared employees having very high net salary, and therefore they will generally, and because the interest on this deposit was quite fancy, 9%, 8.5%. Today, where will you get 8.5% interest? Banks are reducing interest, and therefore this is going to be blow to them. Next is leave travel concession. Earlier, there was a scheme that company was within the block of 4 years was allowed to give leave travel allowances 2 times to the employees. But and that if leave travel allowances was required to be spent on the travel. But current year, being a pandemic year, people hardly could travel. People hardly could take any travel for that matter, not necessarily flight travel, even a train travel, bus travel, excepting in a short distance, hardly could take leave travel. So therefore, whatever allowances they got it, they could not spend it. So what government thought it very rationally. In fact, frankly speaking, if you look at Japan, government of Japan gave $1,000 to every citizen to buy white goods, so that that $1,000 equivalent is spent, and the consumption-driven economy can propel the economy by consumption-driven expenditures can propel the economy, and possibly demand will go up, and the activities will take position in the country. What the government has done it, instead of spending this money, if you use this money for specified expenditure, in other words, specified expenditure where the goods and services tax is leviable more than at 12%. If the tax is levied at less than 12% and expenditure is incurred thereon, then such expenditure will not be qualifying expenditure. But if your expenditure is more than attracting more than 12% GST, then such expenditure also you are entitled to. So therefore, exemption will be available for per person up to 36,000 rupees, or 1/3 of the expenditure, whichever is less. So therefore, one has to really look at this. Is one of the good area where Government of India has thought very rationally that white goods industry can be supported and expenditure can be incurred. And that is why you can see the Government of India must be complimented that we have seen that economy has recovered sharply. And that is the reason last 3 days, you can see stock exchange has also given salute to the government by showing upward trend, crossing again 50,000, which was 10 days before it was, and now came back. Next item of our discussion is the date of sanction of loan for affordable, extension of the date for sanction of loan for affordable residential houses. There are 2 or 3 changes which have been made, and for the affordable housing to give boost to the real estate sector. All of us know that what is the affordable house where the investment does not exceed 45 lakhs of rupees. The benefit was available to all those builders who take up the affordable housing projects, and those projects were taken up prior to 31st March 2021. Now, government realized in pandemic year, virtually the year is lost. In fact, frankly speaking, wherever the limits were only up to 31st March 2021, they ought to have extended up to 2023, but they have now said it will go up to 2022. So therefore, we have 1 more year. If the expenditure is incurred on construction of affordable residential houses, profit made thereon is not liable to tax in the hands of the builder. And also, the buyer of these affordable houses from 2021, assessment year 2021, was encouraged to take borrowing, and if the interest on such borrowing is rupees 1,50,000 rupees, then such interest was also deductible as an expenditure to the SSE. The next is one sec. Yeah. There is another provision which has been introduced, which is very relevant for the purpose of our understanding, because we have come across those non-residents who were working abroad. Now they have come back to India and residing in India. But because they continue to get pension from their employers, ex-employers, they have to maintain a bank account abroad. Their investments made in the provident fund of social security schemes of those foreign countries need to be continued to be kept, and for getting the earnings on that, you have to maintain a bank account abroad. Now, government, lot of difficulties arisen because of the Black Money Act and because of number of laws and because of the over-activism of the government here. The people realized, and people made a representation to the government, that genuine hardship is caused. On one hand, the income tax department want to tax the income arising on account of such investments and the bank account on accrual basis. And on the other hand, the foreign country where they tax these amounts only at the time of payment, finally payment, and accrue, not on the basis of every year accrual. So this has caused a lot of mismatch. So therefore, what will happen as a resident of this country, you have to file that income, you have to show the income in your return of income, but in the foreign country, the income is not credited to your account. And that would lead to mismatch in the tax credit. You don't pay the tax in that country immediately, but you are liable to pay tax here. And when in the subsequent year, when you receive the amount, you pay full tax in the foreign country, but that amount is not taxable here. And therefore you don't get credit for the taxes. So therefore government realized this difficulty, and first time a sensible proposal which has come in. Of course, we have to see the fine print, and in the final proposal, when it comes to what will be the reaction, what will be the eventual clarification government gives, they say we have suitably removed the difficulties, genuine difficulties which have caused, and a new section 989A in the act was inserted, that says that specifically a person from a specified account shall be taxed in the manner yet to be prescribed by the central government. So welcome provision. Then we have the next item is taxation of proceeds of a high premium on unit-linked insurance policy. Very interestingly, we Indians are genius. We Indians are innovator. So a lot of insurance companies worked out the concept of unit-linked insurances. And again, in the unit-linked insurances, number of concepts which we have come across in our day-to-day practice. Some insurance companies were asking you to pay one-time payment in a year, which may be 10, 20 lakhs. And then later on, they will say every year we pay you, say, X amount for next 10 years, 20 years, as the case may be. And the whatever amount which you get, you will get deduction and you will get exemption under section 1010D. And we had examined these provisions thoroughly, and we found that there was nothing wrong in the insurance company's claim, and they were openly making such, recommending people and canvassing such policies and getting the money. The government realized that this is not in the scheme of the thing the government thinks, or possibly where the present bureaucracy thinks. Not that last time also the bureaucracy only thought. So what they said, any premium paid to on such policy on or after 1st February 2021 means yesterday, day for yesterday only. If you have paid any amount of premium more than 250,000 rupees on a term policy, then such amount paid more than 250,000 and interest earned thereon, no exemption will be available. So they have inserted provisos and the clauses in this section. Number of clauses have been added. So in case if you have paid more than, it will be restricted to 2.5 lakh rupees. Similarly, if you have paid, just a minute, something happened, I don't know. I'm using somebody else's laptop because I generally don't have laptop. I use only iPad. I thought that it will be easier for everybody to use laptop and I can share the screen better, not from the. Just निकालो ना जल्दी से screen के आगे. कैसे निकालेगा? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Sorry, such a simple thing, and you have no knowledge on the technology. This happens like that. So if you have paid more than 250,000, no exemption will be allowed. If you have got number of policies and the total amount of all the policies put together exceeds 250,000 in any one previous year during the term of any policy, then excess will be restricted. No deductions will be allowed. Restricted amount not only applied. However, these restrictions will not apply in case if the amounts are received. Exemption will not be denied to you if the amounts are received on death. So therefore, that continues to be available with you. There is no reason that they should restrict that restriction on the death amount received by them. So in case if suppose the investments have been made, there will be a deemed taxation of profit and gain from the redemption of the ULIPs at the time of redemption, and therefore accordingly the taxation of capital gain will work out and you will be liable to pay capital gain tax. All other provisions of capital gain tax will apply accordingly. Next item, which is an important clarification which has come up, is a very welcome change. In fact, government should really realize not only why only dividend income should be considered as not to be considered for the advanced tax purposes. There will be some number of such casual receipts which you get. They also should not be taken up for the advanced tax purposes. What the government has realized that you receive dividend only when the companies declare dividend. Till the company declares dividend, the income does not accrue to you, and therefore government says you will take advanced tax liability on the dividend only when you receive the dividend or amount is declared by the companies, and you cannot estimate. You cannot say that next year the companies will be declaring the same amount of dividend. So as and when the amounts are declared, you take the amount in your calculation of advanced tax. But if suppose this is a second installment, then the dividends on which you have received the dividend, investment on which you have received the dividend, between the first installment and the second installment, you will pay the advance tax from second installment onward in the three installment. Not that you have to pay it immediately. And therefore, all installments will become due only from the date when you realize the dividend on the basis of accrual, on the basis of declaration by the companies. So I would take as a welcome change. The next item is relaxation for the senior citizens. These are the provisions not related to corporates I am coming to. A person who is beyond the age of 75 years this is very funny. Their conditions attached are so significantly restrictive, it's virtually impossible. In case if you are receiving any pension or you have received any income from interest from a bank, same bank, it doesn't talk of all interest, it talks of only bank wherefrom you are earning interest. That interest and the pension amount which you have received, even if it is taxable, the bank will take the responsibility of filing the return, creating the tax liability and deducting and paying it to the government. So therefore, this is an additional outsourcing of job from chartered accountants taken away and given to the bank. Sooner or later, because of the evolution of the technology, I would not be surprised if the banks take away, and if the government, this is the starting of this new era of filing return by the banks. So therefore, possibly in future, some of more areas will be given to the bank. And therefore, this is the area where chartered accountants should really mull over the issue seriously, and what should be done, you can decide that later. Then now next come to business taxation. The problem which perennially which is happening, a tug of war between the government and the courts. The courts in India have taken a view that if there is a delay in payment of provident fund or employees' contribution to the fund after the due date, it is also allowable provided it is paid to the authorities before filing the return of income. But now the government says, no, nothing doing. Our intention is you cannot delay, and that there is some genuine reason also. I'll come to that. If there is a delay in payment of employees' contribution to the regulatory authorities in time, there is a delay even by 1 day, this will be treated as your income, and as such it was treated as your income, no deduction will be allowed to you. And this is going to be very, very harsh, but the harshness also has reason, because there are people who left, who were working with the employer became bankrupt, they have collected the provident fund contribution from the employees, did not pay to the government at all, and then employees could not get the credit, employees could not get the deduction, and therefore the government thought this is a better way. If you are a sick company or otherwise, collect the amount, pay to the government before, within the time, and then you will get the deduction. Otherwise, you will be having a double jeopardy. And therefore, this is one amendment which is going to be little important for all of us, because we, while doing the audit, we also certify these payments. Next item is depreciation. We have seen the days where the controversy went up to the Supreme Court in the case of SNF Securities. And the matter was decided by the Chief Justice Kapadia, saying that it came up from Bombay High Court and went to Supreme Court, whether the goodwill which is arising on account of amalgamation of two companies, the difference between the payment and the asset value, if the asset value is higher than the lower than the total payment made, excess will be regarded as a goodwill. And if this is a goodwill created in the amalgamated companies as a goodwill, a new asset, you normally claim the depreciation on that. Income Tax Department used to disallow that. When they were disallowing this, the matter went up to the High Court. Bombay High Court confirmed that. However, Supreme Court, Tulsiyanji Namaskar. When the matter went to Supreme Court, the Supreme Court said, nothing doing. Goodwill is created legitimately and it is an asset on which depreciation is available. You should be able to claim the depreciation. Unfortunately, anything which is decided in favor of the taxpayer, the government always think that it is reversing their thinking, and they have now come out with an amendment saying that depreciation is not available on a goodwill. At the most, what will happen? It will be your capital asset. When you sell, you will get the cost as a deduction and you will get the difference as a capital gain. In case if it is a depreciated, you have claimed the depreciation so far prior to 2000 assessment year 21-22. Now you will not get the depreciation, but the reduced value of the goodwill will be taken as a cost of purchases and deductible, and accordingly capital gains will be calculated. The presumptive taxation in the case as provided under section 44 ADA is generally available to the partnership firms and the partners. But the LLP, they said, is not entitled to claim such a computation of profit under section 44 ADA, that is a fixed rate, and therefore they say there is a prohibition and they have brought in the provision. Next item is rent income. Now, with a view to create the atmosphere of help to the laborers which are migrating from one place to another. Pandemic, we have seen whole host of the people have remigrated back to their home, and then again they are required to be migrated back to the states where they were working for livelihood. So government said that if they have to stay in a place like Jupiter in Dharavi, so they came out with the regulation saying that if anybody construct the houses, affordable houses, and given the houses to the migrant workers and on a reasonable rent, such rent received by the employer will be exempted and it will not be taxable during the year under section 80 IBA. That benefit is available, and therefore, like affordable houses construction and sold by the builders, which was exempted profit from 100% of the profit was exempted for up to 21, which is extended to 22, and therefore even the rent received will be exempted and not liable. So therefore, let us hope our builder community take advantage of the situation. Then next is cooperative bank. If you are converting the cooperative bank into normal banking, the shares which is exchanged on account of conversion, neither shareholder nor the bank will be liable to tax on such conversion of a cooperative bank into a full-fledged bank, and therefore this is one advantage. One thing I did not see, a holding period has been provided separately in respect of the prior to conversion, whatever was my holding. I hope it is arguable case. We'll be able to argue it out that holding period also should be treated as the same period for which I was holding shares as before conversion and after the conversion. Next provision I will not deal with you significantly, but I'll just summarily say the disinvestment. Government is targeting major disinvestment, particularly companies like LIC, the number of other companies, BPCL, which has got a lot of properties. They may hive off the properties to a separate company under the demerger scheme. They have come out with a relaxation. They will not be treated as tax. It will be a taxable event. It will be exempted. Some, unless you are an undertaking, your loss carry forward or your loss carry forward is not available. However, in the case of a PSU, if the demerger results into a loss, that loss will be allowed to be carried forward. Next item is incorporation of startup. Now, the companies which you create, startup companies, if you have set up a company which is a startup, up to a particular date, you are entitled to claim exemption. If you are invested into such startup, you are entitled to claim the capital gains arising on account of sale of assets which you have invested into startup, also not liable to tax. That was available up to 31st March 2021, and that date has been extended to 31st March 2022. So welcome change. We see there's no reason why it should not happen. Next is if the builder is selling his stock in trade, and as all of you know very well, there is a ready reckoner rate. His computation of income is governed by section 43 CA. Work in or the stock in trade sold by the builder must be sold at a ready reckoner rate. In case if the difference is there between ready reckoner rate and your sale price, the difference was treated as income. However, few years before, the leeway was permitted of 10% safe harbor. If the difference between your sale price and the ready reckoner rate does not exceed 10%, no taxes, no additional tax will be levied. That was provided. This year they realized because of pandemic, a lot of builders could not sell their inventory. So they have now provided, in case if suppose you have taken any sale after 12th November 2020, but you are in a position to complete such sale before 30th June 2021, and it is builder's original sale, it is not a secondary sale, then such profit, and that, of course, the consideration is not more than 2 crore because they said it is only affordable houses or the small houses. So then income that arising therefrom, there will be no difference, will be treated as liable to tax. In other words, the difference between the ready reckoner rate and your sale price is allowed to be 20% rather than 10% for this period. A special concession has been granted for a short period. Next is limit on tax audit. All of us know very well, we are all impacted. If the companies whose audits which we are conducting is so digitized, all the transactions which they have entered into are in the normal banking channel or through the digital mode, then the turnover threshold for such companies or clients audit is 10 crore now instead of 5 crore. So therefore, there is a chance that you will lose number of clients for doing audit, tax audit, because the government feels the reason given, rationale given was very correct. But if this rationale has to be adopted, then this should be adopted in across the board everywhere. He says because of technology, it is possible that a lot of people do transactions only in the digital mode. And therefore, if we want to ensure that such digital mode is made regular and the people carry out the transactions, business transactions in this fashion only, in such a cases, no audits are required if the transactions are, if the value of the total transaction does not exceed more than up to 10 crore rupees. I believe if that be the rationale, this rationale can be extended to number of other areas, but it is against our own thinking, so therefore our own profession, so I will not speak much about it. Issuance of, next item is issuance of zero coupon bonds for infrastructure debt funds by the government this year. If you look at the thrust of this whole budget, Tulsian ji will be able to tell us later on. Thrust is on infrastructure development, and therefore for infrastructure benefit development, if the bonds are issued, it is possible that you create a bond wherein that you take the money in advance, but no interest is paid at all during the pendency of the life of the bond. But your back-ended interest is calculated and you pay at the end of the tenure, then interest will not be computed on an accrual basis, and therefore no TDS will be required. Of course, we have IDBI's case where zero bond coupon were issued and the interest was calculated at the time of redemption. And the courts in the government issued a circular accepting that proposition, but that has been now made statutorily under the Act itself. Next is one area of tax planning. People massively use this area of tax planning. You all know very well, people do slump sale. When you do a slump sale, why do you do a slump sale? Because GST law also says on slump sale, there will be no GST. So people were encouraged to do a lot of slump sale. But a lot of chartered accountants are innovative. The definition of transfer for the purpose of slump sale does not include exchange, relinquishment, etc., which is part of section 247 of the Income Tax Act, the definition of transfer. But slump sale definition is not a definition of transfer, which is the different. People took merged both the definitions and come out with a concept. It is not a slump sale. I am selling it. It is a slump exchange. What is the meaning of the slump exchange? When you are selling the assets on a slump sale basis, consideration of which is given to you by way of a shares of the other company, it is not in cash. It is a slump exchange and not a slump sale. And therefore, they say it is not covered by the definition of slump sale. not covered by the definition of transfer, not covered by the definition of any other definition, and therefore not liable to tax. And Bombay High Court, first to start with in Bharat Bijli's case, held that it is correct, not liable to tax. Subsequently, a number of other courts have also approved the theory, and the government negated this by way of an amendment. Of course, it's a prospective, not a retrospective amendment. Another major area of problem for practicing, for people who are working the business in a partnership firm. You all know very well, Section 45(4) was there under the Income Tax Act. Under Section 45(4), a capital asset taken away by the partner by way of a distribution on dissolution of the firm or association of person or body of individual or otherwise was chargeable to tax as income of the success of the firm, of such firm or association or body of individual in the previous year in which such transfer takes place. Further, the fair market value of the asset on the date of transfer was deemed to be the full value of consideration for the purpose of Section 48. And accordingly, calculation of capital gain was done in the hands of the firm and not in the hands of the person who takes away the assets. Now, section has been amended. The government felt that there is a lot of abuse which has taken place, and therefore they want to capture this. Honestly speaking, what they are saying is they are going to tax it in the hands of the firm, and they continue to say in the hands of the firm. Another area which was very important, I'll give you tax planning, what used to happen. A partner before retirement, the firm will revalue all the assets and credit the revaluation reserve to the retiring partner's account and other partners' account. And all other partners through the firm will pay him the consideration equivalent to the value of the capital credited to his account. And he will say that what I have received from the firm is my credit balance in the capital. Where is the question of it? Taxation. And the taxpayer has always been successful in arguing this. And the government says, while calculating the capital gain, we will calculate the capital gain in the hands of the partnership firm. But when it comes to the partner, revaluation will be ignored. We will take the capital amount credited to his account on account of revaluation. We will not accept this, and that will create a lot of problem. But the firm will still be taxable. Similarly, new provision has been introduced under Section 45A, which says in the case of specified persons received during the year any money or any other asset at the time of dissolution, reconstruction. So if there is a reconstruction of a partners between the partnership assets, if the one partner takes a share of profit higher than the other partner, and reconstruction results into transfer and distribution of an asset between the partners, such distribution also will be treated as liable to capital gain in the hands of the firm, and accordingly the capital gain tax will be payable. These are the two sections which is going to be causing a lot of trouble to all the chartered accountants in practice, all the people working in the business in the form of a partnership firm, and therefore valuation is going to stop. These provisions have come into effect from 1st April 2021, and therefore it will apply for assessment year 21-22. So therefore, in a way, this provision is retroactive. Those who have done this planning and distributed everything prior to 31st March 2020, they have nothing to worry. But now if they distribute now, before 31st March 2021, thinking that the budget has introduced this provision, it will apply next year. No, wait. This will apply even for current assessment year only. Next is equalization levy. Least I say is the best. They have tightened the ropes everywhere. Now the regulations have been created. There was one loophole against the taxpayer. It was possible for the assessment year for the financial year 2021. The person was liable to royalty and fees for technical services tax as well as equalization levy. One thing which they have brought in, that in case if you are liable to tax under the Income Tax Act for royalties on fees for technical services, then the equalization levy will not be leviable. But reverse is not correct. Reverse is not acceptable to them. So therefore, people were paying 2% equalization levy, but not paying royalties and FTS. That has been retrospectively amended. Now, therefore, everybody will have to take a position that either I pay royalties and FTS and I don't pay equalization levy. That is acceptable. There are a lot of nuances under these provisions. Royalty has a lot of things which are not considered as royalty. For example, payment for software is not a royalty. Payment for technical services, make available article wherever make available a provision exists in the treaty. The payment for such services is not a royalty, no fees for technical services, and therefore it will now fall under the equalization levy. And therefore, these provisions must be carefully worded, carefully studied, and understood. Friends, please note the definition. The definition of services have been so tightened that online sale of goods, even small fraction of the transaction is online. For example, order is placed on online, rest of the delivery is physical. It will be treated as online sale and liable for equalization levy. And therefore, this is one area which is going to be a major area of tax practice. People should start concentrating on this area and working out their practices for their benefit. Next important change, which is, I think the amendments I have listed out everything nicely so that you will be able to read it carefully. The tax incentives for units located in International Financial Services Center. This is at Gandhidham, Gujarat. If you have got any unit in that tax incentive center, IFSC center, then that was exempted for a particular period. So therefore, what the government has proposed now under section 10(4)(d) of the Income Tax Act, that the exemption under this clause shall also be available to, in case of any income accruing or arising or received to an investment division of offshore banking unit to the extent is attributable to or computed in the prescribed manner. So therefore, government want to attract offshore banking centers into this center in Gandhidham. Similarly, government wants to attract offshore banking center to carry out the investment activities. So therefore, capital gains from there also is not liable to tax. Similarly, the government introduced the concept of offshore financial centers applicable to aircraft leasing. Hitherto, people were taking aircrafts either from Hong Kong or from Ireland. And because if you look at India-Ireland tax treaty, the payment for royalty on to lease rent for aircraft was not considered as royalty. And if it was not considered as royalty, it was not taxable at all in India. And every airline, for that matter, without any exception, every airline has used Ireland as the place where from they are taking aircrafts on lease. Now, what the government want to do is, they want to attract all leasing companies to this Gujarat, that Gandhinagar, in this IFSC, so that they can carry out the leasing activities from the Ahmedabad or from the Gandhinagar, and therefore will not pay any tax. Any payment made to such leasing companies by airlines will not be liable to tax as a royalty under the Income Tax Act. Similarly, foreign funds this is a very interesting area. If you look at section 1023(f), the exemption has been provided to the shareholders and to the fund if they relocate their fund from other country, non-foreign country, to the IFSC. So original fund, if it is shifting of their business to this Gandhinagar center, it will not be liable to tax. And if they exchange the shares to the shareholders, that also, because you are now shareholders of a foreign company, instead of foreign company, you will get the shares of the Indian company, which is set up in Gandhinagar. So therefore, you will not be liable to capital tax. So therefore, the only some of the conditions are prescribed, which have been complied with. You should be registered as category 1, 2, or 3 alternative investment fund and is regulated by SEBI. That's all. And barring that, there are no major conditions, and therefore this is one area where my study shows a lot of companies which are now were set up earlier in a place like Mauritius, where grandfathering was permitted by the government under the treaty, possibly they will take advantage and shift. And other countries, of course, they will shift their bases in India, if their investment activity is primarily in India. And therefore, such investment managers working in these centers for managing the fund, they also have been given substantial relaxation. And the government, so far it has not worked. Section 9A of the Income Tax Act, but the government of India has now proposed to relax and taken the power to relax so many conditions which will be helpful to attract the business in these countries. Organizers here, can I take few minutes more and then finish off?
Yes.
Maunasya Svikritim, shall I assume that you accept this?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then there are some changes which have taken place in the MAT calculation, because if you have received some secondary adjustment, for example, we have a concept of secondary adjustment under section 92 CE of the, and also the advanced pricing arrangement. All those adjustments made to your earlier years assessment years, and then, but the profit therefrom you have recovered from your subsidiary company or group companies and accounted for in the current year's books of accounts, the government says you can now adjust to the earlier year's computation and remove this. So therefore, all those adjustments will not be subject to the MAT, and they have permitted that. But it will be taxable in the relevant year, but not in this year. And therefore, if there is a loss in that year, possibly you will not suffer any tax. Withholding tax on the foreign FIIs was subject to 20% under the Income Tax Act. DTAA, if they are coming up from a particular country, the DTAA rate was lower, and there was instances which have come to the government's attention that since the rate of 20% is prescribed under the Income Tax Act, DTAA rate has no application. With due respect, I don't agree with this proposition, but the government realized the difficulties because FII have presented this matter, and they say, okay, in case if the rate of tax is lower under the DTAA, double tax avoidance agreement, then the assessee can be subjected to lower rate of tax in the accordingly as per the rate of given in the treaty. Two important provisions which are very, very important for all of us in practice to understand and realize that there is a provision which have been introduced called as provisional attachment in the fake invoicing cases. In case if the taxpayer is found to be seen to have a fake invoices and accounted for those invoices in the books of accounts, then to the extent of the value of the fake invoices, the government has taken a power to attach his assets, and in case if he gives a bank guarantee, then the assets can be released. Otherwise, he will be subjected to all other actions under the Income Tax Act apart from this attachment. This is for a speedy recovery of the money. Similarly, Section 271 AAD, which was inserted under the Finance Act 20, imposing penalty on a person who causes such person to make false entries or omit entries from the books of accounts, because this is all concerned with accountants, and therefore I thought that I should also harp on these issues. And if the aggregate amount of the exceeds 2 crore, then the penalty also will be levied accordingly, and this penalty also can be recovered out of earlier than normal, rather than waiting for the assessment to complete. Extension. Now there are some procedural sections which are very relevant for all of us. Government has extended due date for filing ITR in some cases, particularly in the case of partners of a firm, because partners cannot file the return prior to firm's audit is completed, wherever audit is required. So therefore now it is made coterminous. Partner and the firm will file return on the due date of partnership as and when the audits are applicable, the transfer pricings are applicable. Then the time limit for belated returns have been reduced by 3 months. And earlier you were entitled to file the belated return up to 31st March of the next, after the end of the year, which was reduced to 31st. Now this has been reduced to 31st December of the assessment year. So therefore, you have to be careful this year. The belated return, if you have not filed return from the assessment year 21-22, if you have filed your return, this return can be revised only within 9 months and not up to 12 months. Relaxation of difficulties in a defective returns. There are a lot of difficulties which came across because the computer does not accept some of the data, and therefore they reject our return. So they said in case of defective return, we will resolve the hardship by notifying the necessary regulation. Time limit for completing assessments also has been reduced by three months. The government gave a very rational logic reason behind this. What they say, because of the computerization and because of the technology and because of the introduction of faceless assessment, it is possible to communicate electronically different aspects of assessment procedure like verification, scrutiny to be carried out by the different persons, different units, and the person-to-person interface between the taxpayer and department is eliminated. This team-based approach for the assessment with the dynamic jurisdiction is typically technically driven very efficiently, and therefore completion of assessment also required to be speedily done. If that be the case, if such an assessment procedure has been introduced where one unit does the assessment, second unit verifies, technical unit gives the guidance, and verification is done, 3 unit, why do they need C and AG now? They should discard the concept of audit, because this is audited thrice, and therefore that at least the officers will become bold to do a correct assessment. Today, under the fear of C and AG, they are not doing correct assessment for the simple reason that they always believe that if you make a mistake in favor of the revenue, you will not be punished. Otherwise, the officer will be punished, and that is the reason why I believe the interface, when it is reduced, even the interference of C and AG on the assessment proceedings should also be reduced, and the time barring period of 3 years should also be reduced to 2 years only. Officers should do job well within time, and the time barring period for the 10 years more than 50 lakh of rupees serious embezzlement or serious frauds which have been detected, 10 years time is permitted. That also should be reduced to 6 years, should not be 10 years. One interesting thing which I must tell you right now, I can tell you, because under section 148, there was 149, there was a provision for going up to 16 years in case if your foreign assets are found to be not disclosed in your return of income, the assessing officer is entitled to reopen your cases for 16 years. That provision has been discarded now, because whole section 149 has been replaced by new section 149. Whole section 148 has been recoded. Search and seizure cases up to 31st March 2021 will be governed by the old law. After 31st March 2021, any search taking place will be governed by the new provisions, new law, and there will be no separate assessment under section 153A, 153C, B, D. All these things are abolished, and therefore all assessments will be done in the normal course under section 148 read with 147 read with 148, and therefore this is one area which is very important for all of us to understand seriously. So that was the next area which I just wanted to say. I quickly ran through for benefit of all of you. Then while laying down the procedure for assessment under the reopened cases, what the government has now said is very nice. The GVK drive shaft Supreme Court decision which was there, which the Supreme Court said before making an assessment, reassessment, ask the taxpayer to file the return, and he is entitled to know reasons. Why are you reopening my case? Once he asks for a reasoning, then you have to give the reasons. He is entitled to object for the reasons given by you. Officer has to dispose of those objections, and thereafter only he can file and complete the assessment. Whole process laid down by the Supreme Court has been brought under the Income Tax Act, and therefore whenever reopening takes place, before doing reopening, the officer will have to undergo this whole process, giving you the notice, giving you taking reasons from you, taking your objections, giving you an opportunity, and then deal with those objections and accordingly dispose of. Next issue is issue of notice under section 148. Earlier, the officer concerned used to issue notice under 142. Now, because it is centralized assessment scheme, faceless assessment, officer is not required to issue notice. What therefore they say, in order to enable centralized issuance of notices and in an automated manner, it is proposed to amend the provisions of section 142(1)(a) to empower prescribed income tax authorities besides the assessing officer to issue such notices. And therefore, they have changed the law. New dispute resolution committee was set up for small cases. Income having up to 10 lakhs of rupees can be now taken up where the return income is less than 50 lakhs of rupees, 50 or less, and income return is 10 lakhs or less. Such cases where the assessing officer must see, then such disputes can go to the dispute resolution committee, which will be headed by 2 chief commissioners, and then accordingly their order will come, and you will have a grievance resolved by these 2 commissioners. Then we have next important amendment: advance ruling authority will cease to operate. However, there are a number of applications which are pending. So what they have created is board of advance ruling, and which is dramatically different than the advance ruling authority. The board of advance ruling will now consist of 2 chief commissioners. There will be 3 benches, 2 chief commissioners, and they will give the ruling, and their ruling will not be binding on anybody. I don't know why people will go to an advance ruling board. The ruling will be appealable. Either department will appeal or you will appeal. But only advantage which I could see is you can go fast track to the High Court by going to the advance ruling authority. Even if the decision is against you and you are confident the High Court will decide this faster, you will take up the matter with the High Court immediately. Faceless income tax appellate tribunal. Least we say is best, because this is the area, in my opinion, what reasoning they have given has been found to be there in number of jurisdictions. There are questions whether that is working well. People are required to make representation only in writing. Possibly we will be able to make detailed representation. Now department also will have to make a detailed representation. After listening after reading both the representation on the matter, the tribunal has to decide the matter, faceless, without any hearing. But in case if the taxpayer still feels that the hearing should be given, then video hearing will be given to the taxpayer, and accordingly the matter will be decided. In a way, the government's experience seems to be that a lot of delay is taking place. Because of that, they must have worked out these provisions. But honestly speaking, ITAT is a last fact-finding body, and they should have a right of interaction with the taxpayer. We have yet to develop the experience how faceless commissioner appeal is going to work. We don't know about it. So therefore, why not to wait for 2-3 years and then thereafter introduce faceless ITAT? But government is in hurry of doing everything. They want to do everything faceless and do a faceless immediately. And this is one thing which has come out. Another area is abolition. Settlement commission, which has not worked very well. It was settlement only for other reasons everybody knows, and therefore this settlement proceedings have been totally cancelled. Only anything which is filed up to 1st February 2021, it will be heard and disposed of again by different constitutions. But thereafter, no new cases will go to the settlement commission. These are the important changes which have been made. Only thing which I need to take up with you, one important change related to charitable trusts. Charitable trust, there is some provisions on TDS, etc. I think we have just ignored, we have not taken into account. Rationalization of charitable trust provisions have been done in the name of rationalization. The new changes have been introduced. One is, if you have received any voluntary contribution with a specific direction that it is received for a corpus, and you have to invest into a specifically designated bank account. In case if suppose you have used this fund for the purpose of day-to-day activities, it will not be considered as application of the income, and application of income will be calculated only out of the current non-voluntary corpus donations. only voluntary donations. In case if suppose you have received the sufficient money and you have replenished this corpus again, then to the extent of this replenishment amount which you have deposited into the bank account of the corpus bank account, you will get the deduction as an application of money. Similarly, if you are incurring any expenditure in a charitable trust by borrowing the money for activities of the charitable activity, then such borrowing made and expenditure incurred therefrom will not be considered as the application of the funds, and accordingly your 85% limit will not meet. But when you repay the borrowings, the repayment will be treated as application and accordingly deduction will be granted. In other words, what used to happen that people used to claim 2-time deduction, that has been done away with. So, lastly, the last item is dispensation of set off of if you have spent any excess expenditure than your legitimate voluntary donations which you have received. People used to claim this excess donation as set off in the subsequent year, and legitimately there was nothing wrong about it, but the government feel that no, it cannot be done. This way you can do 2 times, and therefore it is not allowed to be set off, and that will not be allowed. Lastly, last section which has been amended, which is beneficial provided Chief Commissioner or Commissioner gives approval to such institutions. Earlier, if the school or hospitals are run by charitable organizations having income up to ₹1 crore, then they were entitled to get exemption under section 1023(3) AD and AE, or that limit of 1 crore has been extended to 5 crore. My experience is a lot of commissioners were not disposing of the application. Therefore, as a fallback, you have to claim under section 11, 12, 13. But now they say these options are not available. And therefore, this is one thing which you must know and changes which have been made. Friends, with this, I thank you very much, the JB Nagar Circle, for giving me an opportunity to prepare myself and come out with all the possible amendments before you in the shortest possible time. I suppose this is the shortest possible time within which I was asked to make presentation on the budget. And that's why, of course, the advantage is mine, because then I can make myself ready and equipped with the things which are required to be done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oswal Saab. Your session, as usual, was really excellent. And now we are moving toward a T20 kind of cricket match. So now, and you have proved that you are a best batsman even in T20. So within a shortest possible time, you have covered all the important provisions. So before going further and before proposing a well-deserved vote of thanks, we have received a couple of questions from the participant. So I request CA Purvi Bagheria to kindly raise that question, and if Oswal sir can answer that question, it will be great. Over to you, Purvi.
Yeah, thank you so much. Is my screen visible?
Yeah,
it's visible.
Yeah, it's just a couple of questions. Since the presentation was so exhaustive, I think a lot of queries have not been asked. This is a question: will changes in the tax on dividends to FPI help in tax from them? Probably they want to ask, will it help in receiving tax?
I understood. In the zeal of completing whole presentation, I might have skipped some of the slides and summarized orally very quickly. Otherwise, I have already exceeded my time of 1 hour to 1.5 hours. So therefore, that was one of the pressure on my mind, though it is already covered under the presentation. You see, in case of FPI, the dividend tax is what is the background for bringing this proposal? Won't it increase the dividend outflow by MNC with a huge cash availability? Answer is no. If the cash availability is there, MNCs will anyway pay the dividend to their group companies. Instead of group companies, they will pay to now dividend to FPI. And earlier was the provision that 20% was required to be deducted as per the provisions of Income Tax Act, tax on the dividend, which was irrational. In all other cases, you are deducting tax at the rate of applicable treaty rate as per the law of the country. India has signed number of treaties. For example, with Mauritius, the dividend tax is only 5%. In other countries, there is a 10%, etc., etc. So therefore, you will apply that rate. But in case of FPI, most of the FPIs have come from Mauritius or Singapore, where the rate of tax is lower than 20%. So therefore, they say that 20% was an upper limit, but now we have provided, as per the treaty, whatever the rate is applicable, that rate will apply and not 20%. And in my opinion, even without this amendment also, I had given an opinion that 10%, whatever the rate of the treaty will apply, the treaty will override even these provisions. And therefore, this consequential amendment brought to bring certainty, because a lot of FPI, the practices known in Bombay are different than the practices elsewhere. So therefore, people, the FPI make an investment in various companies throughout India, not only in Bombay companies. And therefore, every chartered accountant should have clarity. And they brought this amendment under the Income Tax Act for that.
Okay. The second question is, I think it's already covered in your presentation. It's asking about if the voluntary contribution of say 10.5% is more than 2.5 lakh, will the excess be taxable? So I think that is already covered.
Excess will not be taxable. Interest on that will be taxable.
Yes, the
Yeah,
interest on the excess contribution beyond 2.5 lakh. So one more question that is from my end. If for assessment year 13-14, what shall be the time limit now for the case reopening under 148? Like, is it retrospective that 10 years would be applicable, or just the 6 years timeline would be there?
Which assessment you said?
13-14.
The old period will apply.
Okay,
Not
because
that-
the department is issuing these 133 notices for those years currently. So that is why I just had this.
Yeah, the old law will apply. The new law will apply from the current year, from
Okay.
1st of April.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. There are a few more, I think. Let me just check the chat.
In fact, we will be wasting our valuable time earning a lot of money from Mr. Tulsian's tips,
Yes.
including
Yes,
myself.
yes.
If
There's
we
no more queries. Sir.
if
Thank
we
you.
don't listen to him, and we
Yes.
will be encroaching his time. Even
Yes,
I
yes.
will wait for listening to him. I'll be delighted, because I am, like also you people, an investor. So I should also listen to Mr. Tulsian.
Yes, of course.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You remain there. Manish ji, short.
Yeah. So excellent session, sir. And we are getting a privilege year on year to listen to TP Oswal sir on immediately after the budget. And whatever government will say that faceless appeal, faceless ITAT, whatever, but we are sure that we will get TP Oswal sir face to face with his analysis in detail on the budget. So I request all the members to carry a vote of thanks with a loud applause, the way he has delivered a session in such a short possible period. Thank you, sir.